basically city code and other items, but council committees, government committees. And Councilmember Cade, were you taking the lead on this?
Yes, I was. So this is one of the topics that came out of our finance committee meeting. An issue was sent to the finance committee by the council to review an ordinance and the way we hire the city attorney. Currently, the old ordinance allowed the city attorney to work, be hired by the mayor and approved by council, and then work at the mayor's pleasure. It was my understanding after reading the documentation that the council changed that to the city attorney now works with council, and the council is responsible for hiring the city attorney and determining what services we want in that position. Sending that to us to determine whether it needs to be changed back or make a recommendation on how to move forward. Didn't seem appropriate at the finance committee level. We discussed that there are some other ordinances in the city that need to be looked at, reviewed, and possibly changed to go along with best practices in city government and move forward there. So the recommendation was that we form something of a governance committee. Rather than formalizing it as a formal committee, make it an ad hoc committee for now to determine what its needs will be. We'll meet as needed, and at this time have at least 3 council members be represented on that committee, and bring the mayor and staff in as needed to provide reports to us, and possibly maybe even expand the committee to include citizens at large to get input from our citizens. But the first thing I'd like to do is establish the ad hoc committee with the 3 council members, and then let the 3 council members determine where to go from there. And we can come back and make recommendations to council if we want to make the committee bigger, or if we want to keep it the way it is.
Councilmember Jones.
One slight clarification in Councilmember Cade's statement is that the city attorney does not work for the council. Okay. City attorney works for the city, but a hiring and dismissal is the council's responsibility in relation to the city attorney. And he's right, we discussed this at some length at the finance committee, and one of my recommendations for the 3 council members would be Councilmember Halsey, Councilmember Walker, or Josh Putman, and Councilmember Cade. These are 3 that I would, my recommendation.
So I think that Halsey would be great, but with him saying he's stepping down in May.
Well, the other option I'd like to see is possibly Councilmember Steiger, maybe Gary initially. The only reason I'd like, because they've been their most senior members.
Sure.
And then Josh, a friend, and then one of the newer members. We've got kind of like a good mix. I'm not adding on that, you know. By council committee.
Okay. Councilmember Halsey.
First off, I move to establish an ad hoc committee of the proposed city government. Limited to 3 council members.
Second.
All those, any discussion?
Second, as maker of the motion, just because I'm retiring in May 1st for health reasons, doesn't mean I quit work.
I understand that. I'm just saying. To establish a committee and then put somebody else in. That's all. All right. So is there any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Cade.
Yeah, I would definitely like to see one of the senior council members on it to help provide the historical perspective of the ordinances. Some of the ordinances obviously were recent ordinances that we were asking to review, but again, someone with tenure on the council knows more about some of the older ordinances as well, because citizens may have come in and complained about the fact that something needs to be changed. They may have some history behind why that ordinance remained in place versus being changed, or if it got changed, why it may need to be looked at again. And having a historian, a senior member to be that historian, I think would be very beneficial for the council, or for that committee.
Councilmember Halsey.
It's not appropriate until after the motion is approved, but I will volunteer to serve on this committee.
Okay. Any other comments on the motion?
I'm wondering if we should put in the motion who appoints the 3 members, or would that be?
Generally, council appoints members to the committees. That's basically our rule, our council rule. This council does. Councilmember Cybert.
I think that having Gary start out on the committee, and then if he does step down, then he could be a citizen advising, helping with our committee. He has some history back there. I might be a little bit forgetful. I might forget this is my 4th grade group and get confused.
Any other comments on the motion? Councilmember Case.
Rather than discuss who's gonna be on it, I think first we should vote on whether we
That's what I'm hoping
actually
for.
have it.
Keep asking for comments on the motion. All right. So, any comments from the audience on the motion?
Will this cover the I-502 zoning requirements, and if so, how quickly would you
No,
guys
it will
know?
not.
It will not.
No. So I do not believe with this motion that we need a roll call, just a voice vote. All those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent. Now that we have a committee, the council likes to appoint those members to the committee. Councilmember Case.
I would like to volunteer my services to that committee.
Point of order, we send the rules to others to look at them.
Well, it's kind of on me.
On your rules.
Second.
Says, all those in favor of suspending the rules?
Aye.
Opposed? There, done.
That works.
Okay, anyway, so Councilmember Case has volunteered.
I would like to volunteer as well.
All right, Councilmember Holstein.
All volunteers since I really Josh and the council president.
Councilmember Walker. Is there anyone else that is interested in being on this?
I'm interested, but I think we're at our limit.
So, always be an alternate.
I think
Yeah,
it's
the
alternate.
problem with 4 on a committee is you have, think you have 4.
Right.
And I don't know if council would be object to having an alternate in case one of the 3 cannot make it.
Well, she wants, she can have my spot if she's.
I really would like to be on this committee. I really
I'm
would.
happy to be an alternate.
Okay. Would that work? So, is there anyone else that would like to be on this committee? Seeing none, so it looks like the people that have set up for this committee would be Councilmember Case, Councilmember Holsey, Councilmember Knudsen, with Councilman Walker as an alternate. Is there a motion to accept those as the committee?
Second.
Would you like to speak to your motion? Would you like to speak to your motion, Councilman? Any other comments from council? Comments from the audience? All those in favor of this committee as established, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Also, I see here on the agenda, and I wasn't sure if council had moved this forward, a discussion on proposed marijuana moratorium and proposed interim zoning ordinance. I thought we wanted that to go to workshop, or did we want it here? I'm not sure.
There's a public hearing coming up when you're gonna hear it then, but that could be totally.
The public hearing is after our workshop on the 3rd.
I seem to recall this was because at a workshop we cannot take public comment, we wanted to take any additional public comment on it at this point, but not actually act on it tonight.
You can just comment at the hearing. So, it's up to you guys. I wasn't sure why it was put on here, and I thought maybe moving forward, it's up to council for this.
Postpone it till workshop.
Just put it on.
It was moved over, it was carried over from the Councilmember Walker.
Since the public hearing's already been announced and posted, can we add this to it? It's the same topic, but it's not necessarily the same specific content that was originally included. Because before it was strictly a moratorium, and this includes the zoning. So, can we add it to that public hearing?
Well, the public hearing, basically, it's not even a moratorium, it's the ordinance.
It's this ordinance.
It's the ordinance that, the public ordinance, the ordinance that you received.
That establishes a
That-
moratorium,
Right.
and what
It's
the
the ordinance
moratorium
that
covers.
basically is taking the place of a moratorium and is establishing an ordinance for 6 months.
But we didn't get to this ordinance until last week, and the public hearing was set before that. So I want to make sure that we're advertising the right thing, because this is the way I read it, is a specific zoning, 6-month zoning change
Rather
versus a
than a
moratorium.
moratorium, 6-month moratorium.
Yeah, I'm not positive, my memory is a little sketchy on this, but I thought this might be to address, staff may have something to update us on with what was presented to get us ready for the public hearing, just to make sure that we know what's going to the public hearing.
So, the moratorium that we had, kind of explain this, the moratorium that we had, and that's what the public hearing was set, is to extend the moratorium. We found out from AWC when they reviewed our moratorium that it's not sufficient. And so, based on the current laws and everything, the attorney from AWC that is working, Carol Morris, that is working exclusively on these for all the cities, has advised us that you do not want to extend your moratorium. You need to replace it with this ordinance, based on the current activity that has taken place in the legislature and the things and how it will fit the city with the current legislation that is being placed, and findings that are coming out as this evolves. And that's what we're trying to protect the city, and this is an evolving thing. Nobody has any rules. Nobody understands where this ball is even landing yet, and yet we're expected to put rules on it that haven't even been established by the state.
So then, this then is basically advising us that our original intent of doing a public hearing on a moratorium to extend our moratorium is now not what we're gonna take forward. We're replacing that with an ordinance.
Correct. Councilmember Putnam.
We still have the option before us of extending the moratorium, which is why we still have a hearing on it. But the recommended action from council is, from the attorney, is to let the moratorium expire and replace it with actual zoning. And trying to remember why this is on the agenda, this is now our first reading, so that we will have had our required readings and be able to actually adopt it after the hearing.
Correct. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
Oh, back and forth emails for a month. Councilmember Jones. Councilmember Jones.
Okay, well, a couple things. One, we're not extending the moratorium because the extension would be only related to medical marijuana. Second, a public hearing is already established for that moratorium, not this ordinance discussion or modification related to that ordinance. So if we're going to have quote-unquote a first reading and then establish a public hearing, we would have to reestablish a new public hearing based upon this new change of this ordinance. So, to me, the public hearing is, for all intents and purposes, defunct, it's mute. So, we need to go through the proper channels of this new proposed interim zoning ordinance that we need to then, do we have to have a first reading? Do we have?
A first and second reading, but not a public hearing.
So, where's the discussion for council? Because this is the first I've heard of this. So why are we going, can we do that in a timely manner between, bringing this to council for workshop, even if we have to have a special meeting, so we stay within that time limit that we run it into?
Right.
The reason why we're looking at the modification, for the moratorium. I would rather see us have a clear discussion with the, city about this proposal. I don't know whether we can do that today or not.
Well, I think we can discuss it, but
Councilmember Walker.
I think we can discuss it, but the thing is if you want to get input, it has to be on the agenda. I think it's a good opportunity for a public hearing.
It just wasn't worth put into a normal flow, you know, we weren't given opportunity. So,
Well, and the reason that happened the way that it did is once AWC had reviewed what we had, they said this isn't going to apply. You're not protecting the city. And so that's when they came back with, this is our recommendation, and going with their recommendation also covers us if we get sued.
So then my question is, I personally would like to have some public comment on the direction we're headed with this, just to give people the opportunity to speak on it rather than just voting on something. So the question is do we need to have a public hearing for that, or can that be part of, if we make it an agenda item at our next meeting, give the public, or even during the workshop, give the public a chance to speak on it?
well, again, discussion or ordinance. Should not the city then establish an ordinance, bring it to the council? I don't see it. We have a discussion, propose, I have an ordinance related in the back, related to the old moratorium.
There's a second one in there, 14-0XX, starts on 69.
Yeah.
That was,
the one we received just, like, it was on our desk before the council workshop.
yeah, it was at work, we had a workshop last week, yeah.
Why is it listed
So, and that's how it should have been listed on here. So,
Well, it is still, the ordinance
you're right,
14
you're right.
XX, it still talks about extension and moratorium. When we establish, so should that that text structure be removed? Because we're not talking about it.
on this one.
Yeah,
Councilmember Holstein,
the next one down.
Yeah, the page
page 17 in your book, you can turn two
yes,
pages.
which comes after the meeting.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Holstein.
Preempts the XX.
Yeah.
I see the new one.
It's right here, the new one, it starts on page 17 in your book. It goes through, and it gives all the definitions. This is the one that was at the workshop last week that we had just gotten from, we had just gotten it that day from the attorney from AWC, Carol Morris.
Well, then we need to give an ordinance.
Can you look up any ordinance on this? Okay. Councilmember Stiger.
Okay, all this talking and replacing and everything else, I think we better be sure that we talk with AWC attorney, our attorney, whatever. I do not want a loophole left in there again like last time. And we had some people jumping on board, and we had left the date open market to us. And so I could just see where we're headed right now. Stumbling around like we are, we're gonna end up opening the door, and somebody's gonna slip in on us. So we need to get some real legal advice and guidance, even if we have to have 4 special meetings, 4 special hearings, I don't care, but we cannot leave that loophole.
Councilmember Case.
Yeah, I think where the confusion for me lied was, when we looked at this, we kept calling it the moratorium
Right.
versus an ordinance, and now reading it, I see that, so.
Well, and originally that's what we were looking at, was a moratorium versus, and then we found out.
Previous meetings, we said,
Right.
we're looking at a moratorium, and it got turned into a proposed ordinance, and I just, because I saw moratorium, I went, okay, this is a moratorium, so that's why I think I That's where I get caught a little off guard here. So I apologize for that.
So, did you find that ordinance
I have ordinance number 14-1855.
1855? Okay. So, Paula, and you've been working on this, on the ordinance?
Would you like me to speak to it?
Yes, please.
There's actually been a fair amount of correspondence, both from the representative from AWC, and this has also been reviewed by Ken Luce's office. I have a question for the attorney about whether there's any reason why the public hearing should be canceled, or is there any way? We do have an ordinance, a moratorium that is going to expire on February 12th. Any action that takes place, I believe, will have to take place on February 3rd unless this new ordinance becomes effective immediately. And I'm looking at the last page, and it says, shall take effect and be in full force and effective 5 days after publication. So there's our lag time again.
There was a emergency clause in there that made it effective immediately.
Which depends on the majority voting for it. If it gets a supermajority, it can take effect immediately. If it passes with a fair majority, it has to wait 5 days.
Okay.
So we won't
All
actually.
right, I remember that discussion now. There's been a lot of correspondence.
I know.
There are bills now in the House that are going in different directions, that are up for, that have been read and are being proposed to do a variety of different things. The Planning Commission will continue to work on alternatives, on considering alternatives to bring forward to council at such time as they're satisfied to recommend something for future consideration. But we all know Association of Washington Cities is our insurer, and they have provided somebody who is an expert on the subject to fashion an ordinance for us, so I think we should give it some consideration. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Question? Councilmember Jones.
Well, as I'm listening, I'm trying to go through this ordinance and make sure what exactly we're talking about, because most of it is based on the law of the state, and then I finally found the interim 6-month prohibition on the zoning. Also, talks about public hearing on the interim zoning in section 6. So I'm gonna assume, even though we still have to have a public hearing on this ordinance,
Yeah.
Am I reading
Within 60 days of
incorrectly?
adoption.
Yes, in an emergency case, we can have the hearing after we adopt it, because it's an interim. Which is kind of backwards, but.
But within 60 days of adopting the ordinance, right?
Within 60 days.
Correct. Councilmember Gates.
So here's my question. We advertised a public hearing for an extension of a moratorium. Now we're looking at needing a public hearing for the adoption of an ordinance. Do we have enough time to advertise the ordinance to convert our public hearing that we have scheduled? We don't. So we have to cancel the public hearing for the moratorium we have scheduled and reschedule a new public hearing. Again, my understanding, based on everything I'm hearing here, we can adopt this if we choose to as council, and then have a public hearing afterwards to address public concerns and get public comment, and then at a later date, if we wish to, we can always repeal our ordinance.
There's another way that we can do this. We have already stated how a special meeting after our workshop. And that special meeting would be the second reading of this ordinance before we pass that. We can allow public comment at that time. So the comment will still, the audience or the public will still have their opportunity to weigh in on the special, the special meeting comment, and we can still, so they'll have an opportunity to say something before council votes on the ordinance.
Right.
And then we can still schedule a public meeting if we, or a public hearing
Public
if we
hearing.
choose to adopt this within 60 days of adopting this ordinance.
That's what I want clarification.
I guess my question is, for Attorney Luce, about, the possibility of not having the public hearing at this stage of the game.
Well, I think the city council is well within its rights to have this declared an emergency effective immediately, and as indicated, have the public hearing thereafter within the 60-day period.
Okay, but our current public hearing, is there any problem with canceling that, or is it something that we still need to honor?
No, I think there would be no purpose in having a public meeting, and you can cancel that.
Okay, and how do we do that? Would we have to advertise tomorrow
Yeah.
through?
Through our normal notification.
Normal notification procedures.
Okay, but we don't have enough time for a normal, for our
Well,
normal.
it doesn't have to be the 10 days.
Okay, so it does need to go to the paper and be posted tomorrow. Okay.
I firmly believe that those interested parties are probably, most of them are here, or will see on the agenda that it is coming up, the ordinance, and we'll say that we will all attend and comment that night at our special meeting,
Okay, so,
which will be the third following the workshop.
all right. So, either I am looking for direction or direction for the city clerk to cancel. If that's your desire to cancel the public hearing.
Councilmember Walker,
Should we include that cancellation that we'll be holding a special meeting?
I think we should.
Comment, I think it's important.
I think so as well. Councilmember Case?
The other question, more for the public hearing, if this, we're gonna classify this as our first reading, if I'm not mistaken. This is part of our agenda, does the public get to comment during the reading period? Is that what you want?
Yes, comment. Once we haven't
Develop
even
discussion.
moved to approve or anything,
I don't think we're expecting a motion tonight, this is
so
just
just for,
discussion.
yeah.
Well, we do need one motion.
Do we move to accept it as a first reading?
Well,
Yeah.
I'd like to
And
make
then
one
council
motion that we,
comment.
right now, make a motion to cancel the public hearing for the moratorium that we are not going to consider at this time now.
So comment, Councilmember Kay, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, it doesn't make sense to have a public hearing on something that we're not gonna act on now. We've changed our mind and moving in that direction, so we need to cancel the meeting and then provide notice to members that wanted to comment at that meeting to be able to give them an opportunity to comment on the ordinance that we're going to review now, or take a look at possibly accepting.
Councilmember Holton?
Same thing. I have nothing further that we can do, we just cancel because we're not gonna take action.
Councilmember Steiger?
I think we need to elaborate a little bit more and not just say we're canceling because we changed our mind. We canceled it due to legal advice. We need to.
Yeah. Any other comments from council?
Could you insert in there as well as notification of the other hearing?
That's what I make that motion as soon as this is back.
Yeah, okay. Any other comments from council? Comments from the audience?
John Thompson, 416 Second Avenue, Southeast Pacific. As I've stated in the past, I've seen what medical marijuana can do for people, and I've seen what abusing it can do for people. And I think a moratorium is not really the way to go. I think an ordinance prohibiting all marijuana in the city would be a good way to go for this simple reason. One, any taxes that come down on this, and they're talking about not taxing medical marijuana, will be so minute that this city will be getting. It won't offset the possible law enforcement additional costs. You got federal way, you got Sawyer, you got Auburn, you got Kent. You, no, to have better resources than we do to take care of any dispensing, sales, or whatever. So I think we should be considering, an ordinance. Besides the fact the state hasn't figured out how they're gonna do it, you know? If we pass an ordinance, federal government or state, whatever they decide, we're protected. Thank you.
Any other comments from council or the audience? Please speak to the motion on canceling the moratorium.
Okay, I was just gonna, Anthony Gilbert, 136 Stewart Road. Actually gonna see if, was there any way to do a citizens advisory committee for this? So we could get maybe some advice from the industry?
So that doesn't speak to the moratorium.
Well, it doesn't.
Speak to the motion for canceling.
Okay, well, this is the first that I've heard of a cancellation of the moratorium. You guys just kind of brought this up, so I'm a little unprepared. Feel a little nervous at the podium, so I apologize. But basically, in a nutshell, the moratorium is just, you guys haven't even really figured out what you guys are doing. You just now cancel the moratorium. So I'm not even prepared with the ordinance. So I'm not even 100% sure what you guys are, what direction you're taking.
Right.
They don't know either.
And what we had tried to explain is based on advice from, legal advice that we had received, that is in the best interest of the city is to move forward with an ordinance. So by canceling the moratorium, we're gonna move forward with a special meeting regarding the ordinance, and we will allow for public comment at that time regarding the ordinance.
Right, so
Before
you're taking
council
legal
votes on
advice,
the
and I'm just saying maybe industry advice is all I'm trying to approach
Point of
here.
clarification.
Councilmember Cave.
We're not canceling the moratorium that's currently in place. We're canceling the possibility of adopting a new moratorium that would encompass both medical marijuana and recreational marijuana.
Technically, we're canceling the public.
Hearing.
A public hearing
The public
regarding.
hearing that is
Right, and
scheduled for the 3rd.
And you're gonna have emergency sessions so that the public can't make a comment on the new ordinance, which we don't even know what it is yet. And that was given to you by legal advice, and I'm saying that the industry may be able to advise you on your new ordinances a little bit too, because just because it's legal counsel does not mean that that's the direction or where it's going, or that it's the best advice for combating, which is what you basically are trying to do.
So we will be happy to provide that information regarding the new ordinance, the ordinance that council will be considering at the workshop next week and the special meeting. So those copies will be readily available, and you'll be able to read them.
Right, so, try to make a motion for a citizen advisory committee. I can make a motion for a citizen advisory committee on that planning commission.
Councilmember Jones?
We're just speaking on the cancellation of the public hearing. So I understand what you want.
Not taking any other
Right
comment
now,
other than the motion
gotta
on the
stay
floor.
within line.
You guys stay with the motion. Your comments will come later when we get to the reading.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on canceling the public hearing on the moratorium based on legal advice? Seeing none. Should we do a voice vote or roll call? Okay, all those in favor of the motion for canceling the public hearing on the moratorium?
Aye.
Those opposed?